Okay. This is a very nice afternoon. It's not raining. It's sunny day, shiny day. It's shining. I would like to thank to all participations. And today that we will have a very unique conference from Feenstra, professor from Netherlands, and he will be speaking about making architecture inclusive, healthy, and durable. It's a very unique afternoon, and then I would like to, behalf of Istanbul branch office, I would like to welcome to Professor Feenstra, and I would like to give the microphone to our President, Professor Deniz.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Teşekkür ederim. Değerli meslektaşlarımız, değerli konuklarımız, ben de Mimarlar Odası adına hoş geldiniz diyorum. Sizleri burada bir arada görmek çok güzel. Aslında uzun süredir de hasret kaldık yüz yüze etkinliklerimize. Onun için burada gerçekten mutluyuz bir arada olmaktan. Biliyorsunuz her yıl Ekim ayının ilk pazartesi günü Dünya Mimarlık Günü olarak kutlanıyor bütün dünyada. Uluslararası Mimarlar Birliği tarafından Dünya Mimarlık ve Habitat Günü olarak kutlanıyor. Biz de bütün şubelerimizde Mimarlar Odası olarak çeşitli etkinliklerle, çeşitli programlarla bu günü, anlamlı günü ve de yayarak haftaları kutluyoruz. Amacımız tabii mesleğimizin içeriğini daha fazla duyurmak, toplumla paylaşmak, aramızdaki iletişimi güçlendirmek, belki güncel bilgileri paylaşmak ve mimarlık mesleğini daha çok tanıtabilmek. Bu mimarlık günü vesilesiyle diyeyim. İşte bu yıl da aslında 4 Ekim yaklaşıyor. 4 Ekim Dünya Mimarlık Günü olarak kutlanacak. Sembolik bir gün olarak. Ama biz bugünden bu fırsatı kullanarak değerli Profesör Feenstra'nın da aramızda olmasından dolayı etkinliklerimizi başlatmış oluyoruz. İlk etkinliğimiz bu olacak. Daha sonraki günlerde de kuşkusuz hem şubelerin hem de genel merkezinde farklı programları var gündemde. Tabii Dünya Mimarlık Günü söylediğim gibi mimarlığı anlatmaya, tanıtmaya, iletişimi güçlendirmeye yönelik, ama bu yıllarda tabii bu salgın da birçok artı değeri ekledi programlarımıza, birçok artı başlığı ekledi diyelim. Sağlık başlığını ve aslında mimari tasarımın, kentsel tasarımın yapılı çevre üretim süreçlerinin sağlık için ne kadar önemli olduğunu, ne kadar yaşamsal bir sorumluluk olduğunu çok güçlü bir şekilde vurguladı. Mesleğimizin de, uygulamalarımızın aslında ne kadar önemli bir toplumsal sorumluluk taşıdığını bir kez daha vurguladığı kamusal sorumluluğumuzu bir de bu boyutuyla, yani sağlık boyutuyla çevreye bakmak, yapılı çevreye ve doğal çevreye tabii ki bütünlük içerisinde bakmak sorumluluğunu da vurguladı. Biliyorsunuz Feenstra Mart ayında pandeminin ilk aylarında bir çevrim içi etkinlikte konuğumuz olmuştu. Kendisi aslında yerel bağlamla, kültürel bağlamla ilişkili çalışmalarını bize online olarak konferansında aktarmıştı. Çok büyük bir katılımla kendisini memnuniyetle izlemiştik. Biz de bu aslında mimarın burada İstanbul'daki ziyaretini fırsat olarak değerlendirerek bu Dünya Mimarlık Günü açılışını onunla yapmak istedik. Çünkü aslında hem bu temayı vurgulamak açısından yerel bağlamın, kamusal alanın, katılımcı yaklaşımların sağlıkla yapılı çevre üretimi ilişkisini vurgulamak açısından önemli. Hem de 2022 UİA tarafından da sağlık için tasarım yılı ilan edildiği için hani bize de önemli ipuçları verecektir diye düşünüyoruz. UİA'nın da teması, tabii Türkçeleştirerek söylersek, bizlerin de 2021 yılı için Dünya Mimarlık Günü teması oldu. Sağlıklı bir dünya için temiz çevre olarak belirlendi. Anne Feenstra, hepiniz belki o konferanstan hatırlıyorsunuz, tanıyorsunuz ama kendisi hem akademisyen olarak, dekan olarak uzun yıllar çalışmaları artı uygulamalarıyla Hollanda kökenli ama Hindistan'da olsun, Pakistan'da, Nepal'de, Afganistan'daki önemli uygulamalarıyla, ekstrem şartlardaki mimari çözümlemeleriyle aslında birçok ödülün de sahibi. Bunlardan bir tanesi 2012'de küresel mimarlık dünya çapında küresel mimarlık ödülleri programındaki ödülü. Aslında şeyde de Mart'taki konuşmasında da denge olarak mimarlık başlığı altında bize bu çalışmaların büyük bir kısmını tanıtmıştı. Daha çok hani bizim de burada sıklıkla vurguladığımız gibi yerel değerlerin, daha sağlıklı çözümlerin kullanıcıyla beraber sürece katılarak koşulların bağlamını daha detaylı değerlendirerek aslında çevreyi iyileştiren, kültürleri geliştiren çözümlerin mimarlıkta nasıl araştırılacağını, nasıl sonuçlar üretebileceğini anlatan bir konuşmaydı. Bugün de aslında yine belki aynı çerçevede bizlere mimarlık yapmak, kapsayıcı, sağlıklı ve dayanıklı başlığıyla benzer bir içerikte mimarlığa başka bir perspektiften bakarak, yani sadece kariyer meselesi değil, toplumsal sorumluluğu, kapsayıcılığı, toplumsal o anlamdaki rolü ve sağlık için olmazsa olmazları ve sürdürülebilirliği, yani dayanıklılığı açısından bakarak konuşmasını hazırladı. Onun için kendisine çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Burada bizlerle olduğu için ve vakit ayırdığı için, emekleri için. Ben ayrıca İstanbul Büyükkent Şubemize, değerli ikinci başkanına çok teşekkür ediyorum. Ev sahiplikleri için bu organizasyonu ortak gerçekleştirdik. Ve sizlere, değerli katılımcılara, meslektaşlarıma da burada olduğunuz için tekrar çok teşekkür ediyorum. Organizasyonda emeği geçen arkadaşlarıma da ayrı ayrı teşekkür etmek isterim. Anne Feenstra konuşmasını yapacak yaklaşık 1 saat, belki 1 saat 10 dakika ama sonrasında da soru cevaplar için, çünkü çok ilginç uygulamalar, açılımlar aktaracak bize. Sizlerin katkıları, soruları için de bir süre ayıracağız. 15-20 dakikayı da ona programladık. Tekrar teşekkür ediyorum. Ben izninizle konuşmacımızı kürsüye davet ediyorum. I would like to invite you here for your speech. Thank you very much.
Merhaba, Istanbul. Very good afternoon. Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. Very nice to see this audience. I'm very happy also to have some construction in the background. As good architects, sometimes we like to build. So we have to bear with some background sounds. Thank you so much, Denise, of course, for having me. Thank you, Arbesh, for your introduction. Thank you, Melis. We will have a discussion about Mimarlik magazine to see if we can do some kind of collaboration. I want to start with a small story about yesterday evening. I was a bit clumsy when I was taking the boat from Europe to Asia, and 2 very kind students helped me out with the ticket. And when on the boat they found out that I was into architecture and how you can make better spaces. They said, maybe you want to go to Gusgunchuk, which is, they said it's a small village, a fisherman's town, etc. So I went there. It's fantastic. I think it's serious competition with Paris. It's really the threshold, the scale, the buildings, the streets, and how the streets and the buildings come together. It's very good. And of course, then you walk around and you see the Bastan Projecti with the Alani and the Maidan. And anyway, at a certain moment you get hungry. And because it was a fisherman's village, I thought no more kebab or lamb meat, but maybe some fish. And they said there's only one place where you have to go to Ishmet Baba. So I said, okay, I go to Ishmet Baba. And this is a very, I think, it's been there for many years, I think. If you look at the waiters and how they, I think it's classic Turkish hospitality. And at a certain moment, I always have my sketchbook with me. And of course, I was eating on my own and making a few notes about the food and this kind of things. And at a certain moment, somebody was looking at what I was doing. And that turned out to be Omar Seljuk Bas, who was also in Ishmet Baba having the same fish as I was having, only he was having it with his wife or girlfriend. I promised you that would make some noise. Thank you. So that is interesting that in a city of 20 million people, where you have lots of construction going on, perhaps my impression a little bit too much construction, because it seems to be that the whole of Istanbul is under construction. And for making city and for the quality of meeting people and greeting people, you don't need so much of a big scale construction. I think you need in cities the human scale, maybe the smaller scale. So this is something that I will kind of touch upon a little bit in this talk. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my stories. Maybe it was a bit boring. So let's go to Punjab. Punjab means Panch is 5 and Ab is the Persian word for water. So the 5 waters is the land of 5 rivers. Unfortunately, the British made a big mess, and Pakistan and India split up as different countries. So suddenly you had East Pakistan, you had India, and you had West Pakistan. West Pakistan became Pakistan, East Pakistan became Bangladesh in 1971, and this is in the Indian part of Punjab. Amritsar is for the Sikh religion. It's the capital with the Golden Temple. They follow the 10th Guru, Guru Nanak, and they're tough people. They have been in many battles with the Mughals, with the Afghans, etc. This is a sketch that I made, and they can be tough. So maybe the knife is for you and me, or maybe it's for cutting a piece of meat. We don't know. But the way they make it is something that I think for you, coming from Turkey, there is a language and a skill to the place, and a kind of an ambiance that is probably recognizable in sense. Yeah, I don't think you have a golden temple like this one, but it's this is a map of Punjab. This is the river Baos. It comes from the Himalayas. When the snow, the ice melts in the spring, very cold water, very clean water comes down all the way to Punjab. This is a rain-fed river, the Satluj, and Ludhiana is a very industrial town, quite dirty. So the river gets quite polluted, a lot of nutrition. So where they come together, this is where the first project is. at what we call in India the Sungum. This is a historical map in the teaching and the projects that I do. So I teach as a professor in architecture, and I practice at this moment in time in India and in Nepal. We always do our homework or our research, as they sometimes call it, because it's important to know where is it coming from. So this is a map by the British before they built the dam. In 1953, they built a dam where the two rivers come together to take the water via canal to a very dry place in India called Rajasthan. The idea of rivers and riverine landscapes and riverine cultures is always related to fish. So I think Ismet Baba would be very happy there. But it also means that the crafts of boat building are very much available in these areas. I don't know if some of you know what is a Ramsar wetland. Ramsar is a place in North India where in 1971 there was a convention for special wetlands. In Turkey you also have a few Ramsar wetlands where the wetland itself is not only a place of natural beauty, of water and land, but it has a bigger impact on the network. So for instance, if the Siberian crane flies from Siberia to India and it passes over Turkey and it lands in a place in a wetland where they eat and where they stay for the night, that means that wetland in Turkey is part of a much bigger system. And then it can become a Ramsar wetland. So it's related to biodiversity. There are a lot of birds. On the right-hand side there is a map that we designed. I like maps. I'm a bit of a map freak. If somebody has a beautiful map of Istanbul, please let me know. I love maps. So the first thing that we did in this project is actually to map what is happening there today. So this is, let's say, the dirty river, the Satluj. And this is the Baos, kind of split up into two rivers, and this is where the barrage was built in 1973. These are people from the forest department in Harike. Harike is the name of the wetland. And I don't know if you can see it, but because it was a man-made lake, 13 villages, we've put down here the names, basically disappeared underwater. Yeah. So we were asked to kind of come up with a strategy of how can you appreciate the beauty of this wetland. And there were different opinions. Sometimes people say if you have a national park or if you have a Ramsar wetland of a place of amazing beauty, you should not allow people to get in. You should just let it be for the animals, and people should not get in, because people sometimes have negative side effects that they kind of could destroy things. There's another school of thought who says to appreciate nature and the beauty of nature, you should have some exposure, or you should have some feeling or contact that you have been able to do bird watching, or that you maybe see the river dolphin, or you see the otters, or the different turtles that are there. Because if you don't see it and you don't feel the beauty of nature, it is very difficult to appreciate it. So with the forest department and the irrigation department, we took the second approach, where we did not want to go inside the wetland, but on the edges of the wetland, we started to make some bird hides, where between a jolly you can actually see the birds, but the bird cannot see you. We made some observation towers, so you can also see the animals that are very shy and further away. Like the bar-headed geese. And this is an animal that actually flies at 10,000 meter altitude. So sometimes when the bar-headed geese is flying, they see a Boeing of Turkish Airlines and they say Salam alaikum. They fly over the Mount Everest, that altitude. But it's a very shy animal. So it doesn't like people, but it stays away for at least 300 meters. This is the Sungum, where the river comes together, and the Himalaya is a big mountain, so that means you have a lot of water. Yeah. In the front you can see the boats that they're still making. And this is one of the first kind of interventions that we made. Very simple, in steel and timber, to just make a seat where you can have a cup of chai and actually look at what is happening there. On the left side is a Punjabi interpretation of Madma Gandhi. It's an interesting kind of colorful kind of thing. And then we designed very kind of hidden, in this case in the mist that is there in the winter, between the trees, observation towers. Normally they design observation towers with 4 legs, but if you have 3 legs, that's already stable. So why would you make 4 legs was our question. So you get a triangular shape and then you kind of go up. And then because of the rainfall, the monsoon rains in India are serious. You need to have some cap on top of your head. And it also in the hot months, it serves as a parasol against the sun. Looking at the landscape, obviously the land is very flat, and if you look very carefully you see how they harvest the hay and they make stacks of it. So in that flat landscape, these hay stacks are actually kind of, they have a very interesting shape and they come a little bit staggered, and in that kind of flat landscape, especially when the sun goes down, it's a very interesting kind of landscape. It could also be the dome of a mosque or of a hammam or of another kind of a madrasa, another kind of domed shape kind of building. Of course, we needed to do some work to figure out, but the idea of having a series of smaller kind of entities in a circular shape and connect them was one of the starting points of the project. So rather than making one large building, actually we made a series of smaller buildings, and that was also important because in the existing situation there were a lot of trees, and especially when the tree has 10 centimeters or more, we decided not to cut it. So that was an enormous puzzle to see how could we place the buildings without cutting any trees. This is for drinking water and the differently abled bathroom. This is the bathrooms of male and female. This is the cafe. This is the kitchen. This is the interpretation center. And this is something we call the special room, where you can have either a meeting, or if there's a class of school children coming, you can do an educational kind of thing of sorts. In my architecture, it's not about me, myself, and I. I'm not so interested in myself, but the process of working with people and discussing different topics, how they see it, how it would work for them, because this is not my building, this is going to be their building. My colleague Rem Koolhaas, you must have heard of him. Maybe you remember the interview that he did about his CCTV building in China. One of the journalists asked him about China is a propaganda country, because they have Mr. Xi, who is the president for life. Interesting concept, but that's a bit bizarre now if you're the president for life. And then to have one media, the state media, who does all the kind of what you read in the newspaper, what you see in television and on the internet, that's a pretty bad idea from my perspective. But Rem Koolhaas, as a me, myself and I architect, said no, when my building is finished, China will be much more democratic. Wow, Ram Koolhaas, are you kidding me? So he talked about his building. CCTV project is his building. And I'm thinking, no, it is not your building. This building will belong to somebody else. You're just the architect. And quite pretentious, no? That you think that when your building is finished or completed, that the country will be more democratic. Anyway, I leave it with that. No more star architects, please. Yeah. And it's difficult because in the schools of architecture, very often they have examples of Zaha Hadid or Norman Foster or this kind of thing. So the children who are study architecture, or the young male and female who want to become an architect, they think they should become star architect. And I think that is really, really a task of us as teachers, that we say it is not about you. It is about what you create. And it is about the process of how you create it. If you are, I worked a few years in London, and Norman Foster is a beautiful example. I don't know if you've been in his office, but I've been there a few times. Thank you. Yeah. So he lives on the top floor of his building. In this case, he actually owns the building, so it is his building. And then he wakes up in the morning, he makes a little sketch. It goes down one floor to the directors. They look at it, they make a few more sketches with it. It goes down to the senior architects, and it ends up somewhere with the junior architects and the model makers. So it's like a factory. 500 people, 600 people working there in a system that works as almost like a factory, and perhaps an architecture factory. He doesn't talk to people, only to whatever. He steps in his airplane, he flies to Astana, because Kazakhstan has decided that they want a crystal pyramid by Mr. Norman Foster, and then he says, yeah, let's do that, huh? A little sketch. Wow, well, how does it work? I mean, that's a different planet for me. Anyway, I like to work with people, and it is, I think, really a difficult task, but if we can teach the students of architecture to try, which is not easy, to be modest as a human being, to become happy when your building is used by people, and not so much whether you are published in a magazine or you're the front cover or etc., etc., etc. This is for movie stars. If you are Madonna or Michael Jackson, well, maybe Michael Jackson is not a good example, he's not there anymore, but or an Angela Jolie or a Brad Pitt. This is movie stars. They are not in the real world. They are in the business of making a dream. And I think architecture is real. If you make a bad building, it's a big responsibility. Yeah. Anyway, I'll stop preaching. I go back to the presentation. Yeah. So, of course, India has a hot climate. When I was the dean in Ahmedabad, which is on the west side of, it's a school of Balkrishna Doshi. I don't know if some of you know him. He used to work with Corbusier when he was a young man in Paris. And Doshi is I think a very, very inspiring architect. He's 90 plus, and he asked me if I could take care of his university for a few years to change, especially the master program, the international exchange program, and to really make the academics much better. He said, I'm too old for it, I can't do it anymore, but in May 2016, we had 50.5 degrees in Ahmedabad. 50.5, yeah. So I don't know what the temperatures are here in Turkey, but 50.5 is not a joke. That's not hot, that's not very hot, it's like a microwave. In Amritsar, in this area, it doesn't get 50.5, but it does get very warm. So air, of course, goes up, warm air. So also, how can you make a domed structure that has natural ventilation going through it? And then by making circular shaped or segmented shapes rings. Perhaps we were looking at, can you also bring in filtered daylight? Not direct daylight. You have a building, you put a window in it and the light comes in like this one, but indirect daylight. And indirect daylight has a really, really different quality than direct daylight, and less problems. The building contractor, maybe you have had that experience. If you design something that is not orthogonal and it has not too many 90-degree corners, the building contractor always gets very nervous. He said, why have you designed it so difficult? And you have this curve, and then there is this one on top of it, and I don't know how to build it. Can you make it straight? Can you make it 90 degrees? Sometimes, maybe. The Turkish building contractor asks you to make your design more simple. So we try to explain it in one way, we try to explain it in two ways, but they were just not getting it, because the idea of the three-dimensionality and how it works was very difficult. So I actually went and talked to the boat builders. Because when you're a boat builder, everything is three-dimensional. Everything is curved. And boat builders are in that sense maybe much more equipped to make this building than the building contractor. So we went with the boat builders and the building contractor together at the table, and we were able, thank God, to give the boat builders the timber work of the structure that was too difficult for the building contractor. Yeah. So you need to change, you need to adapt. If the building contractor says, I really don't think I can do it, don't tell as an architect you should do it, because you will get a bad result. You have to try to imagine that if you were asked something that you couldn't do, how can you find a solution? And there are skills with different people. I mean, if you walk through, I've been able to, in the last 2 days, walk a little bit through Istanbul. You have everything. You have metal workers, you have people who can work with stone, you have timber people, etc., etc. Glass, I mean, the sky is the limit in Turkey, I think. You have everything of the industrial kind of produced things, but also you have a lot of craft people available and the skills. So I think architecture is a balance of both of them. Sometimes you need to make a steel structure that comes from a more industrialized, and you have your 3D programs and you do your strength calculations. But to make this roof in timber, we needed the boat builders. Yeah. It's a beautiful place. So sometimes early in the morning, you suddenly have a visitor there. In the background, you can see the ticket, which is one of the smallest kind of circular shapes that we made. And the project was ultimately funded by the Asian Development Bank and by the Indian government. Yeah. So once you have your basic set of the design in place, we thought rather than just circles who are separated, it would be interesting if you connect them. So if you make circles in timber, maybe the first 2 or the first 3 circles could actually connect in a kind of a segmented shape to bring that together. So here we've started actually to make the dome, and I don't know if you have this timber in Turkey, but this is teak wood. It's quite hardy, and we were very lucky to get a good. Teak wood is typically, it has different colors in itself, so you don't need to paint it. The timber itself is already beautiful in its structure. And as an architect, sometimes you go monkey style on top of the building to take some photographs and to check if the details are done in a proper way. Don't try this at home, but it's it's quite something to be sometimes on top of a building like this. Yeah. And then of course the integration with the rain, etc. You needed also a little bit of pavement around the buildings because the rain in the monsoon months really comes down seriously. So you can see people working on this. So we used brick for the base of the buildings. We used a little bit of concrete for the lintels. and then we have a steel structure, and then the timber on top of it. So this is the cafe when we're a little bit further in the process, and we're still kind of figuring out how that light kind of comes in, but and of course because the walls are not painted yet, it's relatively dark, but you don't need to switch on the light in this building. Yeah. And the 5 windows in the cafe, they look towards the wetland. This is the puzzle, the 3-dimensional puzzle of not to cut any tree. And then you can see, I guess here, that the connecting 2 lowest levels of the circle segments who continue to each other, they kind of form almost like a gate or an entry to the complex. Bless you. And then nature does the rest. I mean, if you are careful with nature, and you kind of don't cut and you don't remove, but you try to carefully make your intervention in the land or in the nature, give enough space to the trees. Nature is nature. It will actually make your design complete. Yeah. For the interiors, we made for the cafe something called tessellation. So on the lowest part we have fishes, and then the fishes become frogs, and the frogs become birds. And then for the special room on the right-hand side, we used a more contemporary way of designing this. So we did this with local artists from Amritsar, and we tested out kind of several kind of things. Don't try this at home. These are acrobats who are taking down the scaffolding. This is the largest dome of the interpretation center. And the interpretation center is basically for information, but also interactive information about this Ramsar wetland and about some of the species, some of the history. And because it's so high, we could actually put in a mezzanine as a double floor. Because if you have 2 buses with school kids, and they are on the ground floor, and you have a group of bird watchers who would also like to come, you can have the school kids on the ground floor and the other group on the upper floor, and they don't kind of interact with each other. So these are a few kind of impressions of how the architecture came about. Basically very simple, circular shapes of different sizes, and then in Punjab they really like colors. They're very, very colorful people. You can see it in the turbans and how they make the drawing of Madma Gandhi. So sometimes as an architect, I mean, I don't know, in Turkey probably also have architects who only use black, white and gray. And then they always say that, no, my building is black, white and gray because the people bring in the color. But most architects, they wear black, right? Or white or gray. So you have black, white and gray buildings and then black, white and gray people. So I think if the culture actually has much more color, why not use more color? On the lowest one you can see the mezzanine. It's a little bit kind of, I'm not so sure about the shape, but it is a little bit like a kind of it's a curve within a curve. And then of course you need to figure out how to go from that level to that level, and we just made the staircase also in the shape of the curve. So this is how it looks today, and we get very positive responses from people and visitors. Yeah. The second project is in a different place. It's in Afghanistan, where 3 large mountains come together, the Pamirs, the Hindu Kush, and the Karakoram mountain. The Himalayas are young mountains, so the same as in Turkey. There are many earthquakes in this place. So designing with earthquakes is not so difficult, but if you don't do it, it can become very difficult. Because earthquakes, they don't kill people, it's bad buildings that kill people. So that's another responsibility that we have as architects and structural engineers. I'll take you to a place in the north of Afghanistan. This is Kabul, the capital. This is the Hindu Kush mountain range. The highest mountain of Afghanistan is 7,400 meters. And then this is a large place, Mazar-e-Sharif, in the north of Afghanistan. It's said that one of the white camels of Ali came to Mazar-e-Sharif. So for the Afghans, it's an important place of history and religion. To go from Kabul to Qom, you have to cross a 4,000 meter pass, which is very beautiful, but also very cold. And then once you go down from the Hindu Kush mountains down, you also see these bacha, these boys who have been cutting some firewood, and they have made a skateboard, and then the guy in the back, he's putting on the brakes with the wheel. They go 50 kilometers an hour. Yeah. So Afghans are not afraid of things. Thrill seekers. The project that I will first talk about is here. I don't know if you can see the cursor. It's a big bagh, a garden. It's called Bagh Jahanama. Jahanama, the garden with a panoramic kind of view. From the roof of the garden, from the palace, this is a small palace built in 1892 by Abdurrahman, the emperor of Afghanistan. From the roof of the small palace, you can actually see Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Yeah. So the river comes from the mountains and then goes down, and basically it ends up in the dasht, in the desert. So it's what they say. It's a river. It's what they call a dead river. It doesn't go to the sea like many rivers do. This is in the airplane. Afghanistan Airlines, different than Turkish Airlines. You can ask the pilot. We are working on a project. My colleague Mustafa, he asked the pilot, we're going back to Kabul. Can you make a turn so we can take a picture of the project? So this is the project here. It's about 300 by 400 meters. And the pilot was very happy to do that. Yes, now, yes, okay, oops. Anyway, yeah. Of course, the Russians invaded Afghanistan, or if you like, the pro-Russia take on it is that they assisted Afghanistan. I'm not here to talk about politics, but the Russians were for 10 years in Afghanistan, from 1997 to 1998, and after 10 years they left in the time of Gorbachev. And when the Americans kind of got into Afghanistan, the Russians told them, don't stay too long. Anyway, Americans normally never listen, and they also did not listen to the Russians, so they stayed for 20 years. So what you see is a Russian tank in the foreground that was left behind. In the backdrop you can see the Hindu Kush mountains and the garden that was in a bad shape. And we basically said if this small palace is supposed to be a future ethnographic museum for the north of Afghanistan, where you have the influence of the Tajiks and the Uzbeks and the Waghis, let's first find out if people understand the idea of an ethnographic museum. So we went around and talked to different villages in that place, what this building meant to them, because they perhaps still see it as the old palace of the king. And they also have a lot of fantasy. So sometimes on a Juma, on a Friday, when you walk around, you ask somebody, do you know this building? And then I play a little bit dumb, and they said, yes, this is a very old building. I say, how old is the building? It's 500 years old. Ah, okay, thank you. Tessellation. So people also sometimes tell you something that you might like to hear, rather than that they've done their research or their homework. So you should not ask one person, but you should ask 10 persons. And then as an architect, you should try to have the best interpretation possible. Anyway, many people said, Ethnographic Museum? What is that? So I tried to explain what ethnographic is, and they said, no, forget about ethnographic. What is a museum? Ah, okay, you want to know what a museum is. So I talked to a few people in the National Museum of Kabul, because I thought it would be better if the Afghans themselves explain to the Afghans, why do you have museums? What is the conceptual idea of a museum? But also I kind of noticed that, okay, so this is going to be difficult to make it for the local people. Because if the understanding of a museum is not there. You and I, when we see a little board, there's a museum, we get curious, we want to see it. Huh? On one of my trips, when we were off the boat, we went to Strato Nikeia. So I love that. It's amazing to see it, etc. But I am a little different, you are a little different than people in villages in the north of Afghanistan. So I said, okay, what do you like? And they said, on the Juma, we like to eat. We like to have a picnic in the Bach. We take our kilim, our carpets, we roll it out, and we enjoy with the family, eating, drinking, laughing, sleeping, etc. So I said, So the garden, for them, is much more important than the building. So I went back to the donor, and I said, let's start with the garden. And they said, no, the fund is for the museum. I said, forget about the museum. We should first get the garden in shape. And once the garden is there, and they are having a good time on a Friday or a Saturday or whatever, so we first needed to restore the wall around the garden to make it kind of safe. There were a few landmines that we had to clear. Landmines are very, very scary kind of things. And once we got the garden going, then I said perhaps on a Juma or on a Shambe, they get curious and they say, so what's in that building? Let's have a see, yeah? But not push your own idea of making a museum through, but take time to listen to them. The building was also in a bad shape, so this is what you get after 25 years of fighting and Russians and Mujahideen and Taliban. This was a palace, and the Russians killed a lot of people. And if you look very carefully, you see beautiful details. And this is a peacock window from, of course, the peacock kind of feathers. The glass turned out that it came from Belgium. I come from Netherlands, so this was from Belgium, is next to the Netherlands. And the wood is from cedar wood. Cederis trees, you also have that in Turkey. So it is very beautiful, but it needs a lot of love and attention to get it going. But there was hope. There was already a person in the building, Sugar Khan, and Sugar Khan decided to take one of the rooms that was still okay, and he likes books. So he made a small library for local children, if after school they would be interested in reading books, etc. And when local farmers in the fields, when they find coins with Alexander the Great or these kind of things, they bring it to Sugar Khan, who actually had a mini museum. So I said, this is very important. Can we make Sugar Khan a part of this so-called Ethnographic Museum, because he is already doing it. So rather than that you say, okay, well, thank you very much, out of the museum, we're going to have a new curator and we're going to make something new. It's very important, I think, to see what is already good and can you help things to make that better. Yeah. It takes more time, it is more difficult, but it lasts longer. And also, of course, in Afghanistan, not everybody is nice, so you have to speak to the local commander, to the military people. They are less educated than we are. They have quite different ideas than we are. But I think as an architect, to be able to do your work, I think you need to talk to everybody. You don't have the luxury to say, I want to talk to you, you and you. And no, you're not educated enough, you have a military job or whatever, I'm not going to talk to you. You might not like what they say, but it's also a way of eating bread and chai with them. It's also a way of giving respect. And maybe they got 5% of the idea, but they thought, at least they invited us, and at least we could have some tea and we could talk about things, etc. And that was important, also for the safety and the security of the project. Yeah. This is me listening in one of the villages, where next to me on the right is Zabi John, one of my colleagues, and this is where the discussions took place of how do they see the museum and what was the idea of the garden and things like that. Yeah. So part of architecture, I'm talking a lot now. I have one mouth and I have 2 eyes and 2 ears. So there must be a reason why we have given the 2 ears. They must be important. But architects in general are not so good in listening. And I think if you try to take more time in the process of making architecture to listen, observe, have more interactions, etc., people tell you a lot. A lot. There's a lot of knowledge in uneducated people. A lot of people have opinions, but they never have a chance to speak because we don't have time. There is a deadline, or we have a small fee, or etc. So we just do what we think is best, but we actually don't listen to people. Yeah. This is with UNESCO in Kabul. So the Ministry of Culture was of course involved. The director of monuments of Afghanistan was involved. And UNESCO is, I don't know what your experience is with UNESCO, but it's a strange organization, I think. Yeah. They have very good guidelines and they have very good basic principles, but I personally don't think there is one UNESCO. It really depends who you speak in UNESCO to, and they sometimes have a completely different opinion. I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Yeah. This is Farah John, who's doing some measuring of the Paksa walls. This is densified mud. They make it without any formwork. On the base it is 1.30 meters, and then it tapers up to about 95 centimeters. These are 9 layers of Paksa, of every time about 55 centimeters, and then a little bit of straw in between to make it more earthquake resistant. On the right hand side is Fazal, and Fazal is, his grandfather was the gardener of the emir. So this is the 3rd generation of people who take care of the garden of the Bach. And then there's an architect, of course. The picture you saw earlier was from this larger room with the burned and the black kind of things. And then there are smaller rooms. So we kind of, as architects, we start to draw and we start to sketch. Maybe you come in here, maybe you have a chai here, maybe you get your ticket, and then this is perhaps the back office. This could be for a certain theme, and so you start coming up with ideas of how to reuse the building. And of course, because for me it was very clear, we need to start with the garden. The Bach needs to be first there, and then maybe the museum can follow. So we did an inventory of the badam, the zardaloo, the anar, I think you call it nar, the pomegranate, what was there in the garden, and see if we could find not like we have in Europe genetically manipulated species, but the original almond, walnut, and pears, apples, fruit trees of Afghanistan. This is one advantage of a very long conflict, because the whole genetic manipulation of fruits and nuts has not happened in Afghanistan. And they taste fantastic. Yeah. They look okay, but the taste is super, super good. Yeah. So never eat a tomato from Holland. Yeah. It's better to eat a tomato from Turkey. Yeah. The Dutch tomatoes, it's like water. They look gorgeous, but it tastes like nothing. It's terrible. Yeah. We have good potatoes, by the way, and raw herring. So I don't know, how many of you have a garden at home? How many of you live in a house that has a garden or a balcony? Nobody? Yeah, yeah, Bach, a small garden, yeah, a few. Yeah. Anyway, in our garden of 300 by 400 meter, we had 4 Russian tanks in the garden. So to get the garden going, we needed to clean the garden, right? And we did. Yeah. God office, bye-bye to the tanks. In the period of conflict, a part of the land had also been used for agriculture, the brown rosette kind of colors, and we kind of reintroduced 75 original tree species from all over Afghanistan for this garden. So if you buy in America, if you buy almond, you have one, and they just ask you how many almond do you want? 1 kilo, 2 kilo. If you buy almond here in Turkey, they said, which one do you want? We have this one, this one, this one. These one a little bit more bitter. These are smaller. These are more eye-shaped, etc. In Afghanistan, we have about 15 different varieties of almond. Yeah. So kishmish, and it's absolutely fantastic. Same with apple and other fruits. There's a lot of varieties. And this is, what's the Turkish name for rose? Gul? Gul. So Afghans, they love gul. And I decided that this whole thing where you get in, this is the main gate, everything would be different guls. Completely. Yeah. And of course I come from Holland, so we love flowers. So we kind of spend some time on this. Yeah. And this is the small kind of palace. This one I will talk about later. In the Mujahideen town, they had destroyed several things, including the gate towards the north. That is for the camels. I will come back to that later. So how do you start a project? I basically invited the masonry people, the ustads, who could do the masonry work. And if you ask people, who of you is a good mason, they all said, yes, I'm a good mason, I'm a good mason, I'm a good mason. So these are the people who said, I'm a good mason. And then you need to find out, are they really good mason or maybe not so good? So we spent a lot of time to go with each of them to projects that they had done before, to see the result, the evidence of what they had claimed. This is how we selected things. And of course we're all sitting on a chair, and the chair is a very strange invention, because most of the time there you sit on the carpet, you sit on the ground. You have either an undercarpet and on top of it you have a kilim or a nicer kind of carpet. And I used it also as a dean in Sept University in some of the discussions. And the results I find with students, when you all sit on the ground on the same carpet, is actually better than when you sit on chairs. I don't know why, but maybe via the carpet you have better vibes or better exchange, or maybe it is something of, I don't know, that they are more, maybe there's more energy, I don't know what it is, but I can say that there is a positive result of sitting on the ground compared to a chair. So then they started, and here we've done the foundation and 2 layers. You can see the top layer is still wet, and it takes about 8 to 9 days for that wall to dry enough, so it has the strength for another layer on top of it. So every layer is about 55 centimeters. And then on top of it you put a bit of straw, and then you put another layer on top of it. So it's densified mud. So same as rice fields, you make different fields, you submerge it, and then you bring in the bulls. What's the Turkish name for a bull? Male cow? Mrr. Huh? Inek? Okay. Boa. Okay, boa. Yeah. And because the bull has more kilograms on his feet than we have. Yeah? I'm 86, so my feet have 43 kilo each. But if you have a big bull, that is much more kilograms. And you need to press the air out of the mud mixture. Because if the air is still there and the wall warms up, air expands and you get cracks in the wall. So this is, you can see the mud field where they get the parsa, and we've reached the top layer, and they bring it up like this. Or when they're on the roof, I don't know if you can see this one, flying in the air. This is the shadow. So this is the assistant, and this is the ustad. So somebody down makes a ball, throws it up, the assistant catches it, and then gives it to the master. This is the door to the north. It's completely new, reconstructed from memories of old people who had described what the gate was. They had said it was for the caravans with the camels. So we could approximately figure out, if you have a camel and it has some packing on top of the camel, what would be the height of the gate and the width. And this is a stone that was locally kind of baked. Yeah. The wood is from Dut, mulberry. Dut, huh? Dut, yeah. So this is a lucky shot. I was on the roof, and then these boys said "Salam alaikum," and it was nice to have the door open and a little bit of light coming in. So this is one of my ustads, Jana Revedin. You know her well. Amazing lady. I hope one day she will come to Istanbul.
She was here for a lecture.
Good. Here's Fazal, who is getting his garden in place. The gul. Yeah. Amazing. I think in Turkey you also like the gul. But the Afghans, they also, when they smell it, they go like, oh. And then somebody has a Rumi poem, and then they go, oh, oh, oh. Like, the rose is so beautiful, but it also has thorns, right? So that could be if you're a lady, and then maybe this is for the man, or maybe if you're a man, this is for the woman, or lady, or man, I don't know. Everything is possible. But they get very poetic from the guls. Yeah. So this is the anar, or I think you call it nar? Nar, yeah. In Dari it's Anar or Hindi. Yeah. And then suddenly, bang, we had a cloudburst. So this is a dry climate, a little bit like the east of Turkey, where you have very little rainfall. So when the cloud bursts, it is very, very dangerous, because immediately you have big flooding and things like that. In Bodrum, they told us that they had a serious flood, and I'm not a global warming expert, but it's for arid climates and climate change, it's a very difficult one, because we design our buildings based on a certain rainfall, and we have our systems of rainwater collection and things like that based on something. But a cloudburst, so it was a disaster. Some people died, a lot of cattle died, a lot of the nar and the grapes and the orchard were kind of washed away, and also a hammam Giste Kupruk got flooded. This is a picture that I took 10 days after the disaster, and the hammam, of course, has I don't know how you call it in Turkish, but the underground heating system in Dari, it's called tabagona, where the hot air is under the floor to warm up the floor, completely full with mud and water. Some domes had collapsed, and this is a kind of almost subterranean hammam. Only the domes come up out of the terrain. So here you can see a picture. The water has subsided, but you can see the damage of the quay. And then some of the domes, these are still okay, but these ones have broken apart. And the landscape, these are new, this is a new bazaar that they're building. Not very well designed, I have to say. I think we could have done a better job, but anyway. Maybe it was an engineer who came up with it. And then this is a madrasa, also with different domes. And you see in the landscape more kind of domes, yeah. So this is basically the end of the orchards, and then the dasht, the desert kind of starts before you reach the Amu Darya river. So the oldest photograph I could find in books was a picture of Pierre Saint-Livre. He's a professor from Switzerland. He had done research in the 60s and the 70s, and he had documented the bazaar from Gholm. It used to be a covered bazaar, but the people of Gholm really resisted the Russians. So the Russians kind of bombed the bazaar, and it's more or less destroyed. The hammam was on the edge of the bazaar, and it didn't get damaged. So you can kind of figure out on the ground and with the literature what has been done. So we kind of put a few things together. This is my sketchbook where I kind of, this is not the plan, it's just kind of thinking about different things. And then, of course, you need to talk to the local, to the municipality, because the local people, they had asked, you are restoring the Baos Jahanama, can you, and this is going well, this is a good job, can you also help us to fix the hammam that had broken down? So local people and the local government is not always the same. Local government, sometimes it's, I don't know, somebody put that person there, but he's not really a person from the community there. So the community asked if we could help. So I went to the mayor of the city, and he said, yeah, I heard about it, and et cetera, but I said that the Prins Claus Fund in Amsterdam, if the people really want, we can maybe restore the hammam, the building together, but then the edge of the river, the bank of the river, this is something that you as the municipality should fix, because there are no funds available for something like that. And the third one is that once the hammam is restored, the hammami and the interior and the towels and everything, the soap and everything that you need to get the hammam operational, to buy the coal, to heat up the water, etc. This is also a job that we cannot do as architects. This is what we can do. But then you need to do this, and the hammami, etc., they need to do this. And we agreed, so that was really good. They're not so good in writing in Afghanistan, so they put the ink, the thumbprints all over the paper. This went to a letter in Amsterdam, because I said, I cannot write it. This is your hammam. You need to do the request to the Prins Claus Fund. They got this with the translation. They had meetings about it. It takes about 2 months. And then in the same time, I was worried because the winter, the temperature goes down to minus 15 degrees. And if the mud is wet and it freezes, that means that the water crystallizes and it breaks the building open. Because ice expands as compared to water. And that would be game over for the building. So I said to the local people, we don't know if we get the fund from Amsterdam, but please, let's get the wet mud out of the building. Let's clean it together. Without any lira, without any rupee, without anything, they started to clean it up from themselves, which was very good to see that. Yeah. This is Mustafa, where he gets the phone call from Amsterdam. The water is still high, that we got the green light for the project. So we got 25,000 euros to kind of restore the building. The cleaning was done already, and I kind of felt that I know hammams a little bit, but I felt that this hammam has been there for 170 years. So I felt as architects it would be good to find out if there were people who had many more stories to tell about how the hammam was being used. So you have the tangible heritage, but also the intangible heritage. So we got lucky. Somebody said, this is Wahidullah. And Wahidullah, he's blind, he cannot see anymore, but he took over the hammam from his father in 1944. That's when he became the hammami, and he was still alive. So that was amazing. So with a family member, we took Wahidullah to the hammam, and once he could hear that he was in the building, he had amazing stories about boys stealing soap, about this, about somebody who was too long in the hot room and actually died. All kind of stories about what had happened in the hammam. Fantastic, really, really beautiful. And at a certain moment he said, and when the call for prayer came, you could either pray in the main central bath area, because there's a mihrab, or you could pray in the barber room, where you get a shave. But we had only seen one mihrab. And we had not seen the other mihrab. So we called the Ministry of Culture and the Director of Historical Buildings in Kabul, and we said, can we get the permission to see if there in the barber room is also a mihrab? And we started scratching away the layers of paint, and we found that second mihrab, which was amazing. So I have never seen a hammam in my life where you have inside the hammam 2 mihrabs. So if you have seen a building like that, please let me know. Yeah. So this Pierre Saint-Livre, he had described in a book of 1972, this is a unique building because the washing and the ablution and everything and the praying is done in the same building. And then we found a second mihrab. So I don't know, maybe it's the only building in the world, but it was very amazing to see this, and humbling also. So this is the plan. You all know hammam. So it's this is the room where you change. This is where you can get a shave. This is the second mihrab that came out. I think you can see it, huh? Or is this one easier? Yeah, this is easier, I think. And then after the changing room, you go to the ablution area. This is where you get a massage. If you're lucky, this is the main mirab. Of course, orientation to Mecca. And then the cold room and the hot room. And this is where the water tanks come from. And then, of course, the hot water is so hot that there is a connection for cold water where you can mix the water in a bucket. Yeah. So architecturally, it's a gem of a building. So it's all underground, all subterranean. And then sometimes it's a square, sometimes it's an oblong, sometimes it's a heptagonal, sometimes it's an octagonal. And the domes are also made in different kind of techniques. These are some really basic sections. We spend more time on the research than on making drawings. And quite often in Afghanistan, when you have somebody looking at a drawing, you ask them, do you understand the drawing? Yes, yes, I can understand it. I said, but the drawing is upside down. Oh, yes. Okay, yeah. So drawing, they teach, as an architect, you have to know how to make a drawing. But I think that in a lot of places in the world, the drawing has very little value. It is. I make a lot of models, physical scale models, because the relationship of builders and people to a physical model is much more than with a drawing. Sometimes people understand a plan, but especially with sections, for a lot of people who are not architects, who are not engineers, they say, oh, it's very technical. So basically they cannot read it. And I think that we cannot say as designers, oh, you're very stupid if you cannot read it. No, normal people don't learn how to read sections. Yeah, this is what we teach at school. So you need to kind of maybe think about it. Yeah. Anyway, this is the underground heating system. Do you know Anna Heringer, the architect from Germany? Well, she studied in Austria, but she's German. Yeah. So Anna Heringer, if you want to see a very different way of drawing, she says that I don't believe in these technical drawings. My drawings can directly communicate to people. You can Google it, Anna Heringer, drawings, etc., etc. It's very interesting to see it. Yeah. So the lowest, this is the underground heating system, of course, and then once in a while you have a chimney. This is the Ministry of Culture person, and Tanvi Maheshwari from my team in Delhi. This is the lime pit. I don't know how you call it. We call it tuna. The lime. No cement, but lime. The white. How do you call it? Huh? Kritch. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, so this is almost one of the first things that you need to do when you do a historical restoration is get your kritch going. This is a little bit further in the process. Some curious visitors. You can see, if you look carefully, that there is a grave here. So not only the hammam was damaged, but also 5 graves of some important people who were buried there in a special location. 4 graves were gone into the river. There was 1 left. So I come from Holland, but this grave was in a bad shape. So we asked the local mullah and people, is it possible to shift the grave a little bit to a safer area? Because my Afghan colleagues, they didn't know how to shift the grave. You don't want to do something that is not done in the correct manner. But with the Quran and the right prayers, you can excavate and you can put somebody in a different place. So that came as an extra. So I had to send an email to the Prince Claus Fund. Can we have 300 more euros to shift one grave? They said, yes, please. Yeah. The bricks, you can see maybe they're special. We went to a bakery to make 26 by 26 by 5 centimeter thick bricks, because this was used 170 years ago to make this hammam, and we did not want to mix different size bricks in the building. And if you use them a little bit with higher temperature, they become yellow instead of red. This is, I don't know if you can see the stone here. So he has mixed his lime mortar, and because it's a hammam, it has high humidity. And if you restore a building with high humidity, it is advisable to use grinded ash, because the ash molecules are very good in absorbing humidity, and then in the summertime, when they don't use the hammam, it kind of dries out again. So this is it's a mixture of lime, grinded ash, and then of course filtered soil, etc. And the small stones he puts it in to keep things in place. Yeah. So here it's coming. That's a bit of the interior. This is the barber's room after the restoration. Different than in Turkey, where sometimes you have very decorated interiors, or in Iran, where they use a lot of tiles or motifs. Afghans are quite barren. They keep most of the interiors very, very simple. Yeah. So this is the grinded ash makes it, of course, a little bit darker. So I've had many people who told me, "Oh my God, you've used cement for this building." I said, "No, this is not cement, but it looks like cement. It's gray, so it must be cement." I said, "No, but there is a whole generation who they don't know anything else than concrete or cement. That's the only solution." But about 100 years ago, we started using cement, and I think we've built a little bit longer than 100 years ago. So, and the beautiful thing of lime is that with cement, if you use cement and you use concrete, after about 35, 40 days, it gets the maximum strength, and then the strength only goes down. After 40 years, after 50 years, after 70 years, big problems now with the buildings of Corbusier and some other people, that it's really falling apart because the strength is declining. With lime, it only gets stronger over time. 100 years, 200 years, 400 years, no problem. So it's interesting. But most governments, also in the Indian government, they pay a lot of money to make the cement very cheap. So you have the cement lobby, they have fantastic marketing, they do a lot of advertisement, because cement is strong and it's good and whatever, etc. So that means that there is a very powerful lobby, government supported in India, to support development by using cube meters of concrete. Oh my God. This is a formula for disaster. If in India, if we would pay the real price for cement, for many, many projects, people would not use it because it's too expensive. And the real price is also, let's say, the negative impact that it has on the environment. Yeah. I don't know the situation in Turkey, but I do see a lot of concrete. My God. Way too much concrete in my mind. Yeah. And it only gets weaker in time. So that is, unless you have really super quality, if you have 60 or these kind of strengths, then it can go longer. But anyway, This is the mulberry timber, the doot. Right, it's beautiful. It has these different colors inside. And mulberry timber is also good with high humidity. If you use pine for the door, you get a banana door over time. And then the local blacksmith, we just asked them to put the horizontals and the verticals together with a big piece of iron. I'll give the translators a bit of a time to catch up. So the lime pit had 4 walls, and 2 of these walls were very good because the morning sun was shining directly into this corner. So if it's winter and you just come from the hammam, you've had your wash, you have maybe your massage, etc., etc., and you've had your cup of tea in the hammam. Maybe you want to go outside in the sun and sit there and have a bit more of a chat. So we kind of used a few bricks that were left over, and we made a very simple seat, and we kind of made a window of also some of the leftovers that we had. And then one day I heard chitty chatty behind the window. There were 2 girls or 3, and anyway, they talked about their playground, and they had so I said, tell me more about this. And then they came up and they said, no, maybe you've done the hammam, but we have a new playground. And I said, what do you mean? They said, we are having a lot of fun on the roof. We had designed the hammam, but they had a free playground. Yeah. So and on the right side you can see the new grave. Yeah. So bathing, a dead person, having a game. They like to roll off the domes. That's fun, or do play hide and seek, and they have all kind of games. So I'm not an architect who says that. We were thinking, how can we make the hammam into a playground for the local children? No. They came up with the idea. Kids are very smart. If they see something that is fun, they say, okay, this is Tessellation. Yeah. So this is against the backdrop of the God office. So the Prins Claus Fund, they've been doing this for 15 years when we did this project, and they said that we've never had such a amazing, it is a building for the community, double plus. It is in a difficult area, the north of Afghanistan. It's a cultural gem of a building, double plus. So they said, can you make a book? And the lady who I showed, Tanvi Maheshwari, I said, Tanvi, how old are you? And she said, that's a very strange question. You never asked me this, which is true. But I said, no, I have a good reason to ask you now. How old are you? And she said, I'm 27. I said, then it's time for your first book. She said, no, because she likes, we'd been writing a few articles together and she really liked writing. So I said, yes, most of the people know me, but you're young, you have a long future. Let's make a book together and you write your name on it, not my name. So a few years later, she wanted to study in Berkeley in the US, and I said, send them a book. And she did, send a book. And in Berkeley they thought, wow, if you can make a book like this, we give you a scholarship. Tessellation. Cheers. Enjoy. Yes. Thank you. Nice. Yeah, the smell. Thank you. Yeah, I can see the grill. One request for the next time. Please don't use plastic. No need. We have so much plastic in the world. But the flowers are beautiful. Teşekkürler. I think you can ask the questions also in Turkish because there is a translation. Yeah.
Teşekkür ederim. I thank you very much. It's very inspiring, and I would very much like to learn how one can get the ash, grounded ash, because it's so interesting with lime together. Can you please tell me?
Yes. Yes. It's very easy. If you have places where they have had fire, charcoal or something like this, yeah? No, charcoal, yeah. It needs to be burned.
Okay.
And most of the time it's black, and sometimes we use it for making quick sketches, the charcoal. Mm-hmm. And then the way we did it is two people who were basically hammering.
I see. Okay.
And then it needs to become powder. Yeah. So maybe in Turkey you can buy it as a charcoal dust. I think for medicine sometimes they use it if you have a bad stomach.
Yeah, but it would be very costly if it's done for the stomach. But maybe there is a natural way of doing it. So
I think if you have you can try after an evening of kebab.
Okay.
If you have the remains, you can try it to crush it, maybe with a stone, or they used some kind of a long, heavy thing of metal.
Yeah. And rolling it, or no?
Yes, also, yeah. So basically, it needs to become powder. If it's too thick, it doesn't work in the mixture. Yeah. Architecture is a bit like cooking.
Exactly.
You need to mix it, make a nice mixture. Yeah.
Merhaba, ben de çok teşekkür ederim. Mimar Sıdıka Bebekoğlu. Külle ilgili ben de bir şey söylemek istiyorum. Kilis mimarisinde kül kullanılıyor, fakat tezek yandığı zaman tezeğin külü kullanılıyor. Odun külü yapıda kullanılmıyor, sadece deterjan olarak kullanılıyor. Sizin söylediğiniz odun kömürünün külü, tam doğru anladıysam böyle galiba. Demek ki odun kömürünün külü de kullanılabiliyor, bunu anlamış oluyorum.
Yes, basically I've also used it in Nepal, in a building that also needed some high humidity. And we tested it out with the white or the gray-white ash that you see after the remain of ambers, and with the black one. And in Nepal, the strength of the gray-white ash was much higher than the black ash. So I can imagine that this is very close to your experience. Yeah. But it's I think if there must be so much knowledge in also, let's say, the Hellenistic or the Ottoman period of mortars. So for instance, do you know what melassem is? Melassem is when you make sugar, This is the brown residue of sugar. So in Delhi, because of the climate in Delhi, they use in the mixture a bit of melassum, because the sugar crystals are very good for binding the silicon molecules together. So it is, to make a good mortar is like cooking. And I'm sure that there must have been quite a bit of research in Turkey about the different ingredients. Yeah. But I've come across in Persia, in Iran, they also use a kind of, I think it's a mixture of almond stones. It's and so in different cultures they use really many different ingredients for cooking. And very often we make mock-ups because sometimes in one climate this works better than the other one, but it's always good to test it out, to make, I don't know, 1 meter of walls, and then you make maybe 5 different samples. Another ingredient that is really good, maybe you remember the Mount Everest project that I showed in March. I think that was the last one in the presentation. So that's the mixture that we use for the mortar is 60% of yak dung. Sorry, 60% of deep soil, so not the topsoil, where you have the organic matter and the little insects, but the deep soil. And then we had 25% of yak dung, so the yak shit, and then 15% of cow dung, so cow shit. And for the first meter, we used broken eggshell. Yeah, because the broken eggshell, it has a very high pH value, and little rodents, mice and insects, etc., they don't like high pH value. Yeah. So for the first meter, we mix that in. Yeah. It's a lot of work, but it's also fun.
Soru sormak isteyen var mı? Türkçe, İngilizce.
Thank you so much. Firstly, I am just a student on the way to be an architect. Therefore, maybe it's not a good question, but I want to ask about the idea beyond the remove the tanks from Museum Garden. I understood that you want to design a garden alive for people, but I would be put them on the exact place because it is historic memory of the place, I think, and maybe nature will be surround the tanks in the future. Why you put them out? I'm just wondered about the idea.
I'm not sure if I understood your question, but once upon a time you had the Emir, the king, Abdurrahman, and he had his own power and his own influences. So he built a small palace where he and maybe his friends and maybe his harem could have a good time. And the garden was also for their own entertainment. So you and I, we were not welcome in the garden unless Abdurrahman said, hey, when you get an invitation, you can come. So the idea is to make it a public garden where the villages around and the people from Gholm, where the garden from the king actually becomes a garden for the people. That was the idea. And the first thing that we actually did was to, as you could see in the photographs, make the walls. But what I forgot to tell is that we also restored the irrigation system, because of course the tree is thirsty. It needs to have water. And then the garden has 8 kind of levels, like a lot of Mughal gardens, they kind of step down. So the water goes from one level to the next level, etc. So that the irrigation system, after that was done and the wall was kind of closed, then we started planting. Yeah. And it's a big success. So some people go to the museum, but most people have a great time in the Bach. Yeah. So that's okay. I think I think it would have been a mistake to kind of only restore the building. Yeah. And as an architect, of course, you like buildings, and but I think if we had forgotten the Bach, we would have made a big mistake. Yeah. I hope I answered your question.
En son ne zaman gittiniz bu binalara? Yeah. Pardon. What time you visited these buildings? The latest time, and how did you find out? I mean, did you notice any kind of disorderness or some kind of problems? Did you see them?
This is a very good question. When I was in the Netherlands, of course, the situation with the Taliban taking over from the Afghan government and Ashraf Ghani recently, there was a journalist who, in an interview, said, "Are you not afraid that Taliban will destroy the buildings?" He said, "Are you not afraid the Taliban will destroy your buildings?" So first I explained about Ram Koolhaas. I said, the buildings are not my buildings. Yeah? These are the buildings of them. They are the maternity waiting homes that we made for the Ministry of Public Health and UNICEF are not my buildings. Yes, we designed them. Yes, we did the supervision and the instruction. The Kabul National Museum is not my museum. It's belonging to the people of Afghanistan. So I said, I think if you look at the Taliban, they are very religious. They really would like to go back to the basics and go back maybe a few hundred years ago in time. They will not allow women many things. They will not allow enjoyment because of music, or maybe that you can have a glass of beer. And they are very orthodox in their kind of beliefs. And my guess, it's a difficult one because I'm not the expert, but about 30% of the Afghans are also quite conservative. So they are okay with the ideas of the Taliban. But 70%, they are looking at the Taliban because the Taliban had a very easy job when the Americans and the British and the NATO, all these guys, also Turkish troops were stationed there. Because it's very easy to find new recruits, to say these Yankees and these Kafirs and these people are on our ground, we should bomb them out and we should knock them down and get them out, etc., etc. It's a very easy job for the Taliban. But now they are gone. Now the Taliban has a different job. They need to prove to 70% of the Afghans that they can run the country, that the country will be safe, that everybody has enough to eat, that there will be enough jobs, that the healthcare system is working, that the infrastructure is okay, that the schools are working. This is a very, very difficult job for the Taliban. Because if you're trained in madrasas and if you're trained in, you have certain expertise, but is this going to help you to run the country? So the pressure in the coming months is going to be on the Taliban to prove that they can run the country. So if they're really stupid, they're going to make the same mistake as they made before. They're going to invite Al-Qaeda, they're going to get the Haqqani network, they're going to get the IS people in Afghanistan. Then they would be really, really stupid. Because if they do that, there would be a repetition of history. Now, Taliban and IS, they hate each other. But if there is a lot of money, maybe that will change. I don't know, I'm not an expert. I hope it will not change. So it's up to the Taliban to basically prove to 70% of the Afghans that they can do a good job. So I'm not afraid that they will destroy the hammam. I'm not afraid that they will destroy the Baos Jahanama. I'm not afraid that they will do that. Because then a lot of people who claim that is their building, it is their hammam, they will not like them. So they need to convince people. Until the coming winter, I think it will be okay. Nothing is going to change. And America, they watch too many cowboy movies, where you have the good guys and the bad guys. Yeah? Americans are very black and white. You remember George Bush? After 9/11. Are you with me or are you against me? Yeah? This is what he tells different countries. What a stupid question. Are you with me? Are you against me? The world is not black and white. It is not that you have a world with the good guys and the bad guys. But I can tell you that as long as the Taliban takes care of food, of jobs, of safety, of many, many, many things, yes, it's going to be difficult for women in Afghanistan, for sure. But the acceptance will be there, I think. And for the Americans, there's only one thing important. If the Taliban is going to keep out IS and Osama bin Laden's and these kind of crazy people. Yeah. If they do that, it's okay for America, I think. Yeah. I'm not a political expert. To come back to your question, they've had many cultural events in the garden. There's a poetry competition between Iran and Tajikistan and Afghanistan, because Tajik and Farsi and Dari are kind of similar kind of languages. So the building is being used. Yeah. So I don't worry about it. Yeah. What happened now in 2021 was supposed to happen in 2014. The Americans had made plans to leave in 2014. They waited 7 more years. Why? I don't know. This is not my decision. But Barack Obama, he did not have the guts to leave Afghanistan in 2014. But the security was going in a not very good direction for people from Turkey or from India or myself, etc. So my wife and I, we left in 2012. I gave my office to the Afghan architects, and of course I work with them. Yeah, if the situation is too difficult, I would not advise you now to go to Afghanistan. It's not a good idea for us. Yeah. But inshallah, it will change.
Sosyal yaşama girmişken Afganistan'daki
Fotoğraflarda kadın göremedik. Kadınlar da bu çalışmalara dahil oldular mı? Sadece fotoğrafın dışında mıydılar yoksa tamamen hiç mi ortada yoktular? Merak ettim.
Yes, there were women in the project, but almost all the photographs that I show are my photographs. And it is slightly uncomfortable for many Afghan women to be photographed. And I always ask if they are comfortable, and most of the time they say, I prefer no. So then I don't take a photograph. Yeah. But for sure, for instance, in the discussion about museum, we were able, together with the museum in Kabul, to make an educational program, Culture for Kids, and that was taught in the different schools around the project. And female teachers, I mean, maybe it's not a good thing to say, but in general, I believe that women are smarter than men. That's my belief. And also here, the female teachers were much faster to pick up this cultural program in the schools than the male teachers. I don't know why, but this is my observation. And I have two brothers, so we're not the smartest family. They sometimes say that also for Afghanistan, if you have a bird and the bird has two wings, it can fly. If you have a country that only has one wing, the male, good luck, it's not going to happen. You need two wings to fly, right? Sorry.
Benim sormak istediğim şu, siz Afganistan'ı gördünüz, yani orada dini bir eğilim, yani dinsel yaşam çok güçlü ve kadın toplumun gerisinde, bir de diğer dinlere karşı o Banyan'daki işte Buda heykellerinin yıkılmasını falan da belki duymuşsunuzdur, gözlemlemişsinizdir. O bölgede, yüksek bölgelerde dini eğilimler, farklı dini eğilimler var. Yani Çin, Budizm, yani farklı dini akımlar varken Afganların bu kadar yani geri kalmış olmasını veya tutuculaşmasını neye bağlıyorsunuz? Bir de yani benzer olaylar yakında bir ülkemizde de 2012'de işte Suriye'de aşırı akımlar başladı, dini akımlar yine. Onları da yani oradan gelenler oldu, gidenler oldu, El-Kaide bağlantıları oldu. Ben daha çok gazetecilik gözüyle bakıyorum. Yani siz bunları gözlemlemişsinizdir. Orada 2012'lerde bulunduğunuz için. Bizde de yani bizim gibi ülkelerde de o gericileşen dini akımlar son yıllarda ağırlık kazanıyor. Türkiye, işte Irak, yani daha çok kadınların örtünmesi, daha böyle bir ne diyeyim, sosyal hayattan geri çekilmesi gibi şeyler var, eğilimler var. Bunları da gözlemleyerek, ayrıca orada gelişen bir Çin var. Yani biliyorsunuz o Nepal, o da farklı dinlerin merkezi gibi bir nokta. Bütün bunları gördüğünüzde nasıl bir gözleminiz var bize ilişkin veya bu çevreye ilişkin? Teşekkür ederim.
I don't know. It's a very good question, and I would like to have a long discussion with you about basically history and culture, and the role of tolerant religions and the role of more orthodox religions. And then I think we also need to think of populism, the influence of populism that we had in Europe in the 1930s, with Mussolini in Italy, etc. So I don't know. I think I'm a professor in architecture. I think about things. I worry about things. I think probably it was a mistake of the Americans to invade Iraq and to do what they have done in Afghanistan. How they should have done it, I don't know. But you do see, I think today, results in places with an enormous amount of culture, an enormous amount of history, that, yeah, very conservative, of very religious ideas are gaining a momentum. Now, how is that related? How does it come? I don't know. I'm not the expert, but I do worry about it. Yes. For Afghanistan, I can say a little bit more because I spent 7.5 years with my wife there, and I think that Afghanistan will be okay. I think, I hope, I pray that the Taliban will not make very stupid mistakes, and I think it's going to be very difficult to be in power for a long time. Because if you tell Afghans that they cannot listen to music, this is against humanity. If you tell Afghans that you cannot fly your kite because you might enjoy it, I don't think it's going to work. People are people. And anyway, so that's, yeah, your question is very good, but it's too difficult for me. Yeah. I hope I answered it a little bit. I think that what I've seen in Afghanistan, or what I've heard of how people, Afghans, doesn't matter whether they're from what different ethnicity of Afghans they are, they're all very, very angry with the blowing up of the Buddha statues in Bamiyan in March 2001. So I think that if one part of your country is the Buddhist legacy of Afghanistan, because I mean, of course, before Islam, there was Buddhism in the country. Many Afghans were very, very angry that happened. Yeah. So I've been teaching there for 4.5 years. In my mind, Afghanistan will be okay. Because you can kill people, but I don't think you can kill a culture. And different than, let's say, there's some new countries in the world, but take your own country, Turkey or India, or there are many countries who have been around for a very, very long period of time. And yeah, I think sometimes it goes up and down, but it's very, very difficult to kill a culture. And that makes me hopeful for Afghanistan in the long run. How long the Taliban will be there, I don't know. But next year and the year after, they're going to have a tough time. Because I really don't know if they're able to convince 70% of the Afghans. So what do? You're going to kill 70% of the Afghans because they don't agree with you? That's not a good idea, no? Anyway. Teşekkür ederim.
Başka bir şey yoksa soru burada sonlandıralım. Süremizi açtık epeyce. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz katılımınıza, katkılarınıza. Bir sonraki etkinlikte buluşmak dileğiyle Dünya Mimarlık Gününüzü kutluyoruz.
Thank you so much.